another useful defensive option. It is called the Z counter. The Z counter is not as hard to pull off as the super counter, though you have to know what the difference between a Z counter is and a simple vanish. For the most part, a lot of moves you can vanish via the guard button if hit at the right time, but in cases of follow-up attacks where the enemy is vanishing and then coming behind you and hitting you, those attacks are going to be susceptible to a Z counter. Z counter is basically a move that allows you to counter when an opponent is using a follow-up attack. Just before a follow-up attack lands, perform a Z counter. It states that Z counters are effective against follow-up attacks, however, if used in that way, they can also be countered. The longer an exchange continues, the greater the damage a return counter will deal. Getting this technique wrong could spell defeat, so be sure to practice and get the timing down before trying it in battle. In both situations, if you follow-up attack somebody and they use the super counter, you can follow up with a Z counter, or if they Z counter your follow-up, you can follow up with a Z counter. Either or will start an exchange, or you can use a mixture of both, but pretty much you want to practice this. I don't have a full grasp on it, so I went ahead and went into the training mode. You can set these settings up so that way you can train it. So here it is real quick for you guys. Go into your settings when you're in a training and go to opponent settings. You want to make sure their strategy is to smash, attack, and follow ups 1. It says the CPU will focus on using vanish attacks. This training is useful for practicing Z counters. So they have it in there specifically for people who want to train this and get better at Z counters. So I went ahead and I practiced with both Kaba and Caulifla, as you guys see in gameplay. Essentially, the Z counter isn't hard to pull off, but because of the angle of the camera, it's at least harder for me to see when the opportunity is to press it. The best way to put it is just as it looks like the opponent is hitting you, you want to make sure you're pressing the button. If you're not pressing a button, then you're not going to pull it off. And yeah, if an opponent uses, say, a super counter, you can counter their super counter with a Z counter or vice versa. So you can either end up having an exchange of super counters or an exchange of Z counters, or a mixture of both. But if you're someone who has the better input capability, I would go with the Z counter, but just know Z counters can then be countered with another Z counter. You're just gonna have to practice, get familiar with it. I recommend you bring multiple different types of characters in here and train how to register when to pull off the Z counter, and the same thing with super counter. If you do this, eventually you're going to go from beginner to advanced, because the amount of people who are doing this online and are able to register when to do it right is not a lot of people, at least not yet. Anyways, if you guys enjoyed the video, hit the like button, subscribe. I am Makai San. What, yo? Let's try to get to 5,000 subscribers. Peace.